And welcome back. This is day two of the PDF Conference 2022. The theme for this year's PDF, just in case you missed it thus far, is Beyond. The Pune Design Festival week started on Monday, the 28th of February, with workshops and a hackathon. And many of you participated in the design quiz yesterday. Over today and tomorrow, you'll participate in discussions, hear talks, and see presentations by seriously experienced designers. Don't miss any of it. Here's a quick reminder about the PDF game. The game is called I Didn't Do It. You need to register separately for the game. The game is tonight. You'll find it under the workshop sections of the PDF website. During this game, you'll learn all about scenario planning in the 2 hours that it will take. And this could change forever how you use systems and your life. Our first session today is called The Business of Design. And let me introduce the speakers. Shibani Dasgupta Jain is the founder and CEO of Baya Design, a design studio and store based in Mumbai. She's been working with arts and crafts for over 20 years now. Shanu Bhatia is the co-founder and director of Eureka Moment. She has rich experience in both design and design management. She founded Eureka Moment with her co-founder, Gary Grewal. Tanay Kumar is the founding member and currently the CEO and CCO, Chief Creative Officer of Fractal Link. He's also an active member of the CII Design Committee, which was formed to advise the Indian government on design issues. Shashank Deshpande is a designer, entrepreneur, and investor. He's currently building something called Qubits, which is a SaaS platform for design ops managers and design leaders to manage and scale the design function. This discussion will be moderated by Radhika Seth. Radhika is the head of business development at Yanko Design, and she's written over 3,800 articles on designers and design on the Yanko platform. Radhika, over to you for the business of design.
Thank you so much, Suresh, for this introduction, and welcome everybody to this very interesting session that we promise will be a lot of fun. So thank you, panelists, for joining me today. And I'd like to break the ice actually with this one quote because we're talking about business of design. It's by Warren Buffett, and it says that you only have to do a few things right in your life, so long as you don't do too many things wrong. And I think this quite is a good quotation to start our session with because the business of design can be as easy as we want it to be, but in reality, it's quite a complicated process because there are two parts for this as designers and as business people. So I'd like to first throw open this question to all of you all and take your interpretation of what do you think business of design means to you individually, as well as a professional who brings in the services of design, and as well as a business person who's trying to grow their business. So I think I should start. Ladies, any of you all would like to take this question first?
Sure, I don't mind.
Yeah, Shanu, go ahead.
So I think I had once mentioned that the word design and business, to me, it kind of gives me a little bit of I kind of skip a heartbeat because to me, design is a practice. And if law firms can call themselves a practice, I always wonder why design should be called a business. On the other hand, of course, the components of business, which is, the whole ability to operate, manage people, processes, finances, all of it is a part of what you're doing as a designpreneur or a design entrepreneur. So, yeah, I believe that design should continue to be called a practice unless you're using design to create manufacturing or products which go out into the market, in which case it becomes a business. To respond to Warren's quote, I think he can afford to say these things. But those few things are actually a lot of things that you have to focus on when you're running a practice or a business. I mean, there's just so much, and you totally get overwhelmed. There's never a point, I think, in your life when you're not thinking through your practice. So, Shivani, you want to add something?
Yeah. So to me, actually, the business of design is actually something we never learned in our, in our academic studies, and we really had to learn in the school of hard knocks. I mean, you have to. You have to learn it by experience. We've had to learn it by experience. I wish I had some background learning in this because When you learn in the school of hard knocks, no matter how much Warren Buffett says that you do not do wrong things, you still do a lot of wrong things. So, but it is a learning for life. I think that you really have to move from being a right brain person to accommodating your left brain and bringing in a lot more analytics and a lot more planning and organization into what you do. And I think that creative people are not always able to do that comfortably. So to me, the business of design is really bringing in a lot of analytical and planning skills into everything that you bring out. And for me, it's been quite a journey to learn that. Yeah.
Right. So, Tanay, over to you. What do you think about this whole concept of business of design?
So I think Shanu started quite well. Those don't go very well together. The business and design. One thing I could just add to it that there will never ever be a book written on business of design. Yeah, there can never be a book written on business of design. Because I think it's no, it's one, we designers actually hate doing business. Okay, and part of the problem starts there. Okay, we hate kind of calling ourselves as business people. We hate ourselves being termed as somebody who is interested in the business side of design, and we try to kind of really navigate these waters of business in our own way. And I'm sure that all of us here have actually either kind of really struggled through or kind of really have found our ways to really keep the business out of design, still kind of really run something which is viable for us to survive. So for me, business of design is a term or a topic which can never ever be static, and it will never ever have a book written. Even if it's written, it actually gets uh, obsolete the next day. Okay, so that's how I define design, business of design.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think here is where Shashank should interject and give us the knowledge and experience that he has in helping designers monetize themselves and scale up. So, Shashank, over to you.
Yeah. I mean, my view perspective on this is that and all my career I've been trying to do this, where I try to bring design and business together, saying, okay, hey, these are not. I mean, you cannot have any activity that you do in an organization which is sort of not in line with what business wants, right? So I believe that both of them have to see the same strategic intent, business, design, and design. And from that perspective, I think design should not be just limited only to design an artifact or a communication. It should sort of permeate in almost every aspect of it. How do you do marketing? How do you do operations? How do you do maybe customer success? How do you do even going and pitching to investors and raising some money? So I think every aspect has to have some sort of a design thinking behind it. And again, design is not limited only to people who are the most creative people, right? I mean, there are a lot of management folks that I've met. There are a lot of marketing folks that I've met who are fairly creative. They have very creative mind. I think our job is to see how we can leverage that. Can we bring all that together, create a very cohesive way of working along with other functions. That is what I will define as business of design. You have to bring these functions together. You have to bring all these aspects together to ensure that the business is successful. If business is not successful, then there is hardly any reason for us to do much here. So that's been my perspective, and all my entrepreneur career. That's what I've tried to do. Be it a services company or be a product company, try to bring the business people and designers together and say, okay, hey, all of us have to see the same strategic intent. So that's my perspective.
You mentioned a very interesting point, Shashank. You use the buzzword of today, design thinking, and it always makes me wonder. We are designers are so great at going to different companies and helping them, scale their business using design thinking as a term. And but when it comes to their own business, very rarely do we see designers actually implementing that for their own practice. And I will use that word, Shanu, because I understand practice and business are two different things. But many times I see that designers tend to blur that line, or agencies tend to blur that line, and that's where the pitfall happens. So I'd like to ask you, Shanu, what do you think about using design thinking in your own practice and then making it into a business scalable, viable option? What has your experience been in this?
Oh, that's such a great question. So design thinking has, it's got a path, right?
Yeah.
You have to start with immersion and discovery. Okay, that is such a critical part of design thinking. You have to understand the problems, perception, your values. You have to understand what the vision is, and you can do it so easily for a third party because you're not. I mean, it's not about you, but when you're doing it for yourself, very often you can't take yourself out of the equation and look inwards. And design thinking needs to use your analytical aspect of your mind to be able to gather, process, bucket information, be able to look at a company and audit it visually, strategically. Very difficult to do it for yourself. It's like a self-diagnosis when you're unwell. You go to a doctor. Your doctor is able to diagnose you better. So I think that component is very important. I'm sure we're all aware of it and we're all constantly trying to do it. But somewhere we find, have I internalized too much? Am I being honest? Am I really being able to express what my issues are, what the needs are, needs of people, etc.? And then you kind of once again to get so busy in doing it for your clients that very often you don't do it for yourself. But if I had to do it, I'd probably get another firm to do it for us.
I can totally understand that. Shibani, what do you think about this perspective? Have you used design thinking while you were trying to build your business?
Yeah, one thing that I realized is that we as designers are constantly trying to create new things and therefore educating people about what we do and what we don't do, and it's all new to a lot of our target groups, the communication that we do is immense. So one very useful thing that I found is that design people, I have involved them not only in the design role, but they can be involved in a sales, in a business development role. They can be involved in a production role. They can be involved in a marketing role. And I have found that this is extremely useful because they can then communicate the language outwards and present what you're trying to say about your work, your what you're trying to make new things happen and why it's important. I feel that communication and even the ability to translate it becomes so much better when you have designers doing not just the core function of design, but that design thinking is brought in into many more aspects of the work that you do.
Okay, Tanay, I'm going to throw some really cool words and buzzwords towards you, and I want to know, it's like just in 1 second, what's the first thought that comes to you? Cash flow,
Important.
important. Pipeline.
Uh,
We can't
Survival.
do so much of time.
Survival. I mean, hope. Pipeline is hope. Sorry. Hope.
Okay, Shanu, tell me, what does cost of acquiring a client mean to you?
Months of work.
And sales cycle.
Oh Lord, always empty.
Okay, Shibani, please tell me, what does what would you think if you had to hire? Who would you hire first in your business?
Salespeople.
So, Shashank, you know what people, the designers, are thinking about this, and you're the man who can decode all of this for us. So,
Yeah.
please tell me, what would you think about cash flow?
Of course, like Tanay said, cash flow is one of the most critical things. It's the oxygen on which the business will survive. I mean, if you don't have cash flow, you will be choked to death. So it's important to have healthy cash flows. And that's in fact one thing that every entrepreneur should worry about. Saying, okay, hey, how can I have healthy cash flows? But just to sort of take on what Shibani was saying, and I think it's important that you involve designers in every aspect. I mean, I'll just give you an example. When we went to, when I was running a services company and we worked with several customers, I think one of the things that we realized was the getting requirements is a very difficult job. Every customer will come up with some customized thing. So we said, okay, hey, is it possible that we can create a standardized way of collecting the requirements? Maybe there may be some few cases where those requirements may be odd, but at least 80 to 90% of the cases can we do that? Because sometimes this is just, what do people want to do, whether in terms of either number of use cases, number of screens, number of interaction, etc. So we said, okay, hey, let's create a very standardized way of collecting these requirements. So anyone who comes to us say, okay, hey, this is the requirement, and there's a lot of design thinking went with that made our job so very simple. From we talking to customer to actually giving him a code was literally 24 hours. Once you get those, so there are a lot of aspects that you can use in your day-to-day work, where I think a lot of design thinking we apply, and it could be in operations, it could be in marketing, sales, customers, whatever is an area. If you apply a good design thinking practice, I believe it helps you to scale your business tremendously. So that's something that I truly believe. But anyway, over to you.
Yeah, Tanay, I actually want to know from you what was your journey for cost of acquiring a client, because I know you worked with many people, and there's a wide variety of work that is there. So what would you how would you peg importance for cost of acquiring a client, just in the context, because I know of many people who just go after that one client and they keep going, and they work with them for a long time without realizing that once that project is over, they don't have anything else as a backup. So if you could elaborate with some examples also and your journey, that'll be really great.
So, I think first thing we'll have to understand in the design of or business of design is that no amount of cold calling or sales, proactive sales works. Okay, it only works when there's a latent need that actually really the client comes up with to us, specifically in a services company. They need to realize that there is a problem which needs to be solved by a design agency, and that's how they will kind of really come to you, or even be open to listening to what you want to offer. So I would say our 90% of our clientele actually are the ones where we go deeper rather than actually we're trying to scout for new ones. Yeah. And that helps us not only to kind of really have a long relationship, but also kind of really build a pool of people who actually go out and then kind of really market us on our behalf. Yeah, and that's how typically it has been happening. And we have been working with a lot of consultancy companies across the world. Some of the large ones where we work with partners, where we work with strategic consultants who actually, once they experience us and once they move from one geography to another geography, they are the ones who actually starts talking about us. Yeah. And to be very honest with you, we still are short of design talent, specifically in this part of the world. We're still very short of it. Okay, we can't really, if we're not able to cater to all the kind of really requirements that are coming up or popping up in the market currently. So it's not a very hard sell. For cost of acquisition, if you ask me, it's lower than a normal kind of really business, I would say. But one thing that you'll have to be really be particular about, that be honest to your profession or your trade. Yeah, you cannot compromise or you cannot kind of really, if somebody is talking about you in another geography and they kind of really place their trust, you cannot breach that trust. And that is the most important part while you're growing, because as you're growing, you'll also see that sometimes you tend to loosen up. Okay, you lose the strings and things actually starts to backfire. That's where I think, as we are growing the organization, as we're getting more clientele on board, I think that is something that you'll have to really navigate through very carefully. And that's our kind of really job as founders or kind of business owners, that once we move out of an active design role into a management role, how do you actually really start architecting the quality? How do you start architecting the culture, the very fact that you became from a 2-person or a 1-person company to a 10 people company to a 100 people company? How do you actually really make that still viable for people to believe that you can do good design? Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, cost of acquisition, I'm not really concerned about, because normally it's not too high. We don't do active marketing. We don't do active sales as such. We just respond to certain kind of really inquiries which come our way. Thankfully, now we are a part of a larger group, Denso International, which allows us to have some kind of really segue into geographies where normally as a company we wouldn't have really gone into, like markets like Indonesia or Malaysia or Japan for that matter. We didn't have inroads there. That's by the sheer fact that we are part of a larger conglomerate. It eases out a bit more, and you also get kind of really those word of mouth also now kind of really making sales for you. So that's if that kind of really answers your questions.
Yeah, it does. But then, at some point, I feel this is, when you have established yourself. But what would you tell a younger you or somebody who's starting out? And I'd like to open this question to Shanu and Shivani as well. As that, how would you balance clients' needs versus your personal design preferences? How would you balance that out? Because once you're established and you're up there, you can be choosy and picky, but when you are starting out, what are the challenges? And if you could elaborate with certain experiences that you've had, so that the young ones who are starting out can make a more informed decision. Because there is a hunger and need at when you're starting out, that you don't mind compromising yourself, diluting your capabilities, but then that becomes a norm or a practice in the long run, because old habits are hard to break. So how do you check yourself, how much you give away professionally? When do you walk away from a deal and say that no, this is where I stop? So Shanu and Shibani, one of you all could start.
So I can go first if so.
Sure.
So basically, I think that a lot of clients have very specific ideas of what they want, and sometimes it sort of doesn't quite work with your own ethos of what you want to do. And I have found that in 7 or 8 of the cases, when I talk to the client and I say that I think I can offer another suggestion that might take this to a different dimension or a different level, most of them listen. So you may have to go that extra half mile on your own, or the last mile on your own, and offer to do some of these refinements or rethinking, which the client may not pay you for. But if it is important to you, and the quality of what you bring out, if that is important to you, then you do have to go that extra mile to do this. And at least as far as I'm concerned, I try to do that in as many cases as I can, irrespective of whether the client appreciates it and puts it out in the market or not. I always try to tell them that, look, let's do it this way. And I think if you do it this way, you will have a better output. And here are 10 reasons why it should be done this way. But that requires some special effort. And it is not always possible in all cases. It is possible in cases where A, the client is willing to listen, and B, where you have the time to do it. If it's a crazy project where you just don't have time to even think, then I just go along with whatever the client says. But wherever I can, and there is that cushion or the bucket is little wider, money wise or time wise, I try to push this in as much as I can.
Yes, Tanmay.
Yeah, just a small kind of really. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's on the lighter note. For some clients, getting to hire a design agency in itself is an extra mile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, they never kind of really, and specifically in the domain that we are into, where we work with a lot of tech companies. We are in the digital UX and UI business. Uh, very honestly, there are no RFPs which comes out of government where there's a requirement of a design agency explicitly mentioned in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always for a tech company, and design is not a part of what they look for. Which means that if they are looking for a design agency, that's already an extra mile. Okay, so I just wanted, when Shivani talked about extra mile, going extra mile, I think for some people, extra mile is just having a designer there. That's it. They have already done that extra mile. So what else?
That is true. That is true.
Nice,
So
nice.
Radhika, I'd like to respond to that also, actually, because it takes me back to when I started, and I have a really funny story. Now, in hindsight, I was a brat when I began. I was the brat. Okay, I believe that what I delivered was just the absolute best, and the client, if they had any queries, I was like, you're getting the best. I actually did this at a meeting. I was right on an idea. I'd gone for a meeting, and the client, I'd worked on this whole thing and I presented it, and they started asking me whether, the money and the viability and the stuff like that. And I started getting more and more incensed. Like, they can't see the big picture, they're not able to see what I'm delivering. That I got up and I walked off. I said, I said, you guys don't deserve me. And I got up. And walked off. And that's a stupid thing to do. You learn. I was right out of college, hot blood, ambitious, all of that. I'd never do it. I'd never do it again, but I did. But what I'm trying to say is you have to be committed to yourself, but you have to understand what your client has come for. Every time a client comes to you, it's an opportunity to build credibility, because you're going to use that as your launch pad for the next client. Look what I did for them. This is how I was thinking through it. Your needs are different, but this is the credibility. So I would say to the young generation, don't be a brat. Look at it from the point of view of the client and what they need, not yourself. Leave yourself behind out of the equation and focus on their needs. And then from your point of view, look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
True that. I think Shanu,
Yeah,
just to
sorry,
add to
go
that,
ahead.
you know what? I've been obviously being in business for now more than 20 years. Uh, you encounter people coming out of design schools and already their heads are there, right?
Ah,
And uh, and that is something that obviously you want to tell them about it. You want to kind of really deliver this, that guys, please kind of really start being humble about what you have, because in design school your egos have already been bloated up. Once you come out, it was almost like the world was waiting for you to really graduate, and then probably everything will come to you. And that sentiment, I mean, all of us had that sentiment. I came from Jamshedpur. I grew up in Jamshedpur. I came here to Bombay, and I was always like, Bombay, yeah, Bombay was waiting for me. Yeah, so now it has got me. Yeah, so that hero feeling is always there. I think that is something that we have to understand. The second is respect for other professions whom you're going to work with. Yeah. In a scenario where design is not the only thing required to really see a product through and through, and you should not have this feeling that you are the only important person in the peg, because many a times you get into that mode and you don't listen to people. Okay, you start ignoring their suggestions. You always think client is wrong. You always think client is stupid about it. Things like, yeah, we produce beautiful designs. Yeah, we produce beautiful looking designs. We don't talk about feasibility, etc. But at the end of the day, there has to be money put behind the ideas that we are giving. There has to be a plan to be able to see how much the acceptance of mass is going to be on the product that you're designing. All this is pure business. You can't kind of really just ride on the wave of design. So I think somewhere this realization has to be brought in. It will not come, and I'm telling you right away, it will not come on day one. You will still graduate thinking that you are the one. But sooner you realize, I think the better it would be for you to go ahead and start becoming acceptable to the market. Otherwise, market will reject you at some point of time if you're not kind of really respectable to other things around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, though I must say that, in my last 25 years that I've been working, I've actually lost my temper with clients maybe 4 or 5 times. But they have been major, major temper tantrums that I've had to throw. And out of 5 of them, at least 2 have still retained me. The other 3 never spoke to me again. But I felt very good about it after I fought with them, because they deserve to be fought with. And, I don't regret saying no to some of those guys. Yeah.
Shivani, I think it's like ragging in the college. When the seniors actually catch you in the first year, they rag you. Okay, they
Yeah.
rag you. If you survive the ragging, then you're your best friends. Okay, that's what will have to be. That
Yeah.
clients are going to rag you if you're okay with getting ragged, and they will become
No,
best friends for life.
but yeah, it's best. I've seen the people who do best are the ones who stay really, really cool to all of. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I resonate with that because as a publication, we work with a lot of designers and a lot of startups who are doing crowdfunding project. And I
Yeah.
consistently had this one client from Germany, and I must have published almost 8 to 10 articles for the projects that they had. But this one time, I don't know what came into them, and they were like, "No, you have to write the article just the way we tell you." And I'm like, you hired me as your professional, and you know what I do. I have got you success in the past, but what you're presenting, this is not how communication is supposed to do. This will not resonate with my readers, so do not let me publish it this way. But he refused to listen, so I said, okay, this is on you. Responsibility is on you. If this bombs, it's on you. And I actually went in ahead and published it, and naturally it bombed because I'm speaking from experience. And after that, the client never came back to me, but that was my intention because I no longer wanted to work with that client. Because if you're hiring me, you're paying me top dollar for it, at least trust me to do a good job. And I've consistently in the past given you that experience, of success. Then why would you want to change that formula? So this leads to my follow-up question is, when do you walk away from these? I'm like, apart from being a brat and always listening to the other side, you do what they say, you've proved yourself over the years, but then why would clients want to rock that boat? And if they are being in that direction, maybe the management has changed or some new marketing guy has come or some new ideas have come. How do you navigate this kind of choppy waters and make sure that you still are in the skin of the game? Or do you wear a thick skin and do what they say, like how I did? I knew it would bomb, but I wore a thick skin, did what they said, and then ultimately, like I said, they are no longer there with us. So how do you navigate these choppy waters?
I think I've had an experience where I've had to tell my entire team, guys, follow your egos. We actually had a wonderful project, great client, big corporate wanted us to do, an entire shift in a retail identity system. We did some spectacular work, and they loved it. They approved it. It went through all stages of approval right up to execution. At execution, they got the operations finance head to come in, who was everybody's boss. He didn't have a design sensibility. He came in with a very old world, old school, senior sensibility, but they all kind of bowed down to him. They said, whatever he said. After he said what he said, I wasn't there at that meeting, unfortunately, so I didn't get a chance to, make our case. But what he said changed the entire project from being fluid and future focused to being rigid and old school. And the team, the quality of the team who we had been enjoying working with changed. Their tone changed, everything changed. Like, you guys have done something that made our boss kind of, make us, not appreciate what we did. And, now you have to do it our way. So we had a choice there. Like, I told my guys, look, this guy probably knows his market very well. Perhaps we are pitching too far into the stars, into the planetary system. Maybe the market is not ready for it. Swallow your pride. Tone down the design. And we did. And it rolled out. And we're very happy. I always have a twinge of disappointment. But, I'm in a space now where I can see better from the client's point of view. I know that if that one man was a different one man, a more creative guy with more flair and aesthetic, our project would have taken a different turn. But these are the guys they elected to lead the company.
Correct.
So they're needed. So you got to put that before. So yeah, it's happened.
Also, I think
Yeah.
yeah, Shashank, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, they always meet some tough clients, tough customers who really would understand design at a very tactical level. But that's okay. I mean, I think it's a job. There's a lot of education that's required in the business that we are in, and that education will happen slowly over a period of time. So first of all, maybe we have to pick up better customers, better clients who've already well educated. But in case not, I think you have to work with them. And I've seen this time and again where I have kind of rational out with a person saying, okay, hey, this is why I believe that this is the right thing to do. And he's taken some time, more time to understand. But overall, at some point, he's come around and say, okay, I understand what you go through. Very rarely I've met people who can kind of completely dismissed what I'm saying. But it's job of educating them, and it takes some time. That would be my short.
So I think, Radhika, I think one thing that I would like to add to this is the projects that typically we get involved into, which is more like long term, okay, like digital transformation of a company where things are being changed, and it takes around 2 to 3 years to really complete a whole cycle where everything gets transformed. Yeah. Here, project fatigue and agency fatigue is a real thing. Yeah, we have to accept it. We'll have to accept that at times we get even clients are fatigued by just talking to a single person and kind of getting this similar thing out. And even the people who are working on the projects, they get kind of really worn out. They don't really, they involuntarily are trying to kind of really have got complacent in the system. They have got used to a certain way of working, and there is nothing new coming out. These are the moments when you have to take a step back. You have to really take a step back and say, you know what, is it doing anything good for anybody? Okay, is it doing good for the clients? Is it actually good for the people whom I have hired to do the work? Is it actually, are they doing anything meaningful, or are they getting the rut of work? Or is it just kind of giving you money? Okay, which also over a period of time kind of really you kind of start kind of feeling that, you know what, it's okay. I mean, you can get that money somewhere else as well. At that point of time, when you realize that this project fatigue has sinked in, you should, and I'm recommending, you should step back and give up the project as well after a while. Yeah, you cannot kind of really, you should not stretch it. Typically, we have seen one client walk into it and talking about the same thing, trying to kind of really talk about our design quality going down, etc. And we realized it. We realized it, as Shanu said, we realized that we are actually not doing a great job at it. But when we looked into ourselves and we saw that this is the fatigue which is actually, and not the real people who are working are really bad on it, uh, we said we are going to take off the project, and we politely kind of said that, you know what, I think it's time for you to move on to a new company which actually will be slightly more kind of enthused about what they're doing. While client was taken by a shock because his idea of coming to us and complaining was to negotiate on the price, but we were ready to walk off. Okay, and he was definitely irked by. He never expected that we will be ready to walk off as such. But I think realization at this juncture, where you're seeing that this is not doing good for anybody, and this is where design thinking comes into play. Okay, please go into look at it as an outsider. Just kind of get into the thing and just realize it's not doing good for anybody, and just walk off. It will not do good anything, to anybody, and it will just go down, and it will create bad vibes. It will also kind of really create bad experiences, which will again then multiply when these people go out and again talk about you. So these are the situations where
Yeah.
we definitely try to come out.
I just feel that in when times are very choppy, and I'm giving an example here. We had to do these massive art installations in a place where there were it was a very iconic place, and there was a terrific deadline, and they had to launch it on a certain date, and there was also the Mumbai monsoon floods going on and everything, and we were given scope beyond what our scope of work was. But if we had refused to do that, it was impacting our deadline. What do you do? Every day, the architects, the clients are after you. What are you doing? This wall is not ready. What is happening? And no matter how much you say this is not in my scope of work, nobody's listening at that point in time. So at least I believe that you have to solve the client's problem at that stage. not try to make it yet another problem for the client, but you have to tell them in soft ways, I'm going to deal with this problem, but when the time comes, I'm going to bill you for it. So, at that point in time, you actually do what is required, solve the client's problem, get on with it, and after that, you talk to them and you say, this was beyond my scope. I need you to pay me for this.
Yeah,
It's happened in a couple of instances where.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question. Would you actually bill? Because this is one thing in my experience that I have seen. Even many seasoned salespeople also are very hesitant to ask for more money. They are hesitant to bring up these uncomfortable topics of I want more money, or this costs XYZ, or especially when clients says discount and everything. So how important, or how would you, and if you could really elaborate this with examples and personal experiences, which I'm sure will be valuable, is how do you negotiate? Nobody teaches you to negotiate, although it is very inherent. Like when we ask our mother that we want a sweet as a child, she says no, but we negotiate with her for her to actually give us that chocolate. So it is there inherent in our in our DNA, but we don't use it. So how do you learn to negotiate, or what did you all do to learn to negotiate, or ask for that extra money for the work that you have put in, rather than shy away and say, "Nahi to kaam chale jayega. I will not get this business," or fear of losing business and going to someone else. So how would you all, explain that for our viewers today?
I had a really bad experience last year. Imagine middle of pandemic, etc., and we were called in by a very reputable, large educational network, I can call it. And we were told that as soon as they saw our credentials, they loved our work, and we had one round, we had a second round with the director of the institute. They loved it. They said, we just have one more round. I said, what is that for? Negotiations. I said, I've given you my fee before we started thinking, talking, etc. There is no negotiation. Shanuji, just, one meeting, it's important. He's a very important man, etc., etc. I said, okay. So, and there was like a panel. It's, education. And so there were a panel of people online, etc. I showed, the approach, etc. This man had such an ego. He told me, if you give me a 30% discount right now, I will not only give you this project, I will give you a similar project with the entire network of educational institutions. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I won't, I can't. It just devalues. That means you haven't understood the value that we are bringing, the effort it takes, none of